When I met with the administration team this summer, we talked about the possibility of me coming to teachers convention, because I'm kind of an invisible force on the team, even though I've been available for many years. Often it's a phone consultation or emails and so forth. So they like for me to show my face now and then, so y'all think that I'm an actual real person. So we're going to talk about trauma today. Trauma is a very big topic. I know for me as a school psychologist, when I'm in professional development, we're talking a lot about it. And in light of the pandemic and just the effects on the world, I thought that was very relevant. So what is trauma? You know, the word is used sometimes loosely as to what trauma is, but you can experience it or witness it or be confronted with it. It can be, the severity can be very extreme, such as threatened death, or it can just be a verbal attack. And it's typically external, and it's when it overwhelms a person's coping responses. And of course, we're talking about children whose coping responses are not as well developed as ours as adults. And it can be public or private. So certainly, you know, with the world shutting down in 2020, a lot of kids were relegated to their homes, not healthy situations, not great environments for them. So they were trapped, and I think the trauma that they endured could be very severe. And I'm seeing it in the school system, and I'm sure you're seeing it among your students as well. What we know is that it can have lasting effects. It's not just a momentary thing. Kids are not over it the day after. Trauma is very prevalent. Many people have experienced trauma. I'm sure everybody, if you take a moment, you can think about something in your experience over your lifetime that was very stressful for you, that you didn't feel that you had the emotional strategies to deal with, and you might have needed time to process it. Well, when you look at little ones, 7-year-olds, 12-year-olds, they don't have the experience. They don't maybe have the outlets to talk about these kinds of things. So there was a study done about adverse childhood experiences. And so children who have these kinds of ACEs, a great majority of them are at the hands of their own parents. And the study found that 80%, which is enormously high. I'm sure there are situations where it's extended family members, coaches, clubs, where there's Pathfinders, Girl Scouts, things like that. And sometimes even within the school system. But the great majority is at home, especially when it's young children, and the home is their main environment. All right, some of the findings of this research is that
or down, push it down. It's the opposite in other.
The experiences may not be acknowledged that these children went through. It is very powerful because it affects their physical and mental health later on as adults. When children go through traumatic experiences, they have a higher level of cortisol in their brain. And a lot of times that cortisol doesn't necessarily dissipate as properly or as typically as it should, which can cause later on mental health issues such as depression or anxiety. So that's fairly common. It can also lead to other organic diseases, but typically mental health is going to be one of the first ways it manifests later on.
What?
Okay, what kinds of trauma are there? A trauma can be a single event. It can be something recurrent, for instance, verbal abuse in the home that the child is witnessing. It could be complex trauma, or it's something that the child is experiencing themselves, like sexual abuse. And then there could be historical or intergenerational trauma. You know, we were just talking at lunch about the sins of the father. So for instance, if somebody has gone through something as a child, this young man, when he becomes a father, he may parent that way. And I was actually just sharing this with my son because he was looking over my PowerPoint and he was asking me what intergenerational trauma was. And so we were sharing with him that, you know, if a grandfather was very abusive physically in how he disciplined, then that dad will likely discipline his children the same way. If he hasn't been able to process that, has not been taught that parenting can be different than that. So chronic trauma is when there are multiple traumatic events. You know, many parts of the world are having situations that are war-torn. And so those children are going through tremendous trauma. They don't know what's happening. their environments are insecure. I just put this picture up because even here in Gordon County, we have a lot of children who are food insecure. So it's cumulative, and sometimes, each incident just compounds on top of, the accumulation of things. And it just creates a feeling of helplessness. And with children especially, they don't have a lot of resources because they are minors. So when they're put in these situations, it is very stressful for them because they don't have an outlet. They don't have a place to discuss this, and they don't know necessarily who's safe. And everybody around them becomes scary to them. Because if you're a primary caregiver and you've had disruptions in that primary caregiving cycle, how then can you trust other people in your life? So it has this lingering, very negative adverse effect. So complex trauma, like I mentioned earlier, is when it's directed, and it's often related from the caregiver. It has very long-term effects for future relationships. This is the kind of trauma that can also cause severe mental health dissociation, whether that's multiple personalities or anything very severe because it's too traumatic for the brain at the time. But the main things with complex trauma is to think about that it's usually coming from a caregiver. There is a very strong and heightened sense of betrayal, and it's happening during childhood. So when the child is completely helpless. When I worked in a psychiatric hospital at the beginning of my counseling career, I was on a sexual abuse consult team. So there was a handful of us, and what the SA team was for was to do sexual psycho developmental histories. So if someone would come into the hospital who had a history of sexual abuse, we needed to be the ones to do that kind of interview. It was very stressful. It has to be done, of course, very carefully, but it was very stressful. And sometimes even for me, just sitting down and talking to someone about that and having to ask them such intimate questions about the pain and the abuse that they went through took such an emotional toll on me. And I didn't do it very many because, of course, there was a team and we shared the responsibility. But oftentimes when I would have to go do one of those interviews, I would just have to go to my office and decompress and cry because it was so hard to hear those details. And I would always remind myself, I'm just listening. I didn't endure it. And so you think about some of the littles in your class, even if you have a middle schooler, but they went through this at 4 or 5, it's a lot for them to share with you, but we weren't in the room with them. We weren't there when they were actually undergoing this experience. This is a very heavy topic. So, all right. This slide in particular kind of really spoke to my heart because, again, kids are minors. They don't have the option to report, move away, or protect themselves. I was recently evaluating a student who is 15. He comes from a family of 8, and the parents went through an extremely acrimonious divorce. And the divorce was maybe 4 years ago, but continuing to have not complex, but chronic trauma from the interactions or really negative interactions between the parents. And so this 15-year-old, he is the 3rd youngest. He talks about how his older siblings have been able to get away, have finally been able to get a life, and he still feels trapped. And this is what this slide makes me think of, is the kids who, as minors, they have nowhere to go quite yet, and they just have to survive. And so often, sometimes they don't even talk among their siblings. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they are so isolated, they don't know that the other sibling or someone else is going through the same experience as them. But the main point here is, what do they do with that trauma, and what's their behavior? What's the output of the behavior like? Well, a lot of times they feel beholden to maintain a secret. You may see this in the classroom as defiance, and defiance is very difficult for classroom management for sure, but they have a need to act it out. The anger, the sadness that they feel, it's coming out in an aggressive manner, which as teachers, you may be on the front end of. Or they'll do whatever they can to survive, whether that's stealing food or trying to get some kind of attention. They'll try and get it in any way they can. It's not necessarily positive. There will be a loss of safety when they're going through personal complex trauma, and the family or someone in the family is the one responsible for being the perpetrator, and that's the source of trauma. It's a very unsafe situation. How can the child go home every day? They still, oddly enough, still love that parent, that caregiver, whether it's a guardian or grandparent, aunt or uncle. So they're struggling because they want to still love that person, but they don't quite understand why they're being victimized. They can't ask the kind of questions that they need to get the answers. You know, God created us to be developing in a certain way. For the time, even in utero, when we're first developing as a bunch of cells until the time we're born, and it's very linear. God is so organized in how he created us and how we're meant to be developed. And so with children, when they are abused and when they go through trauma, it is extremely disruptive to that developmental system and what God designed it to be. And so they struggle to deal with the emotional portion of it. But if there's physical parts, if there's neglect and so forth, it's very hard for them to then develop as a whole as they need to be at their optimal levels. And so in your classrooms, you're going to have kids who are not at their optimal levels. They may not be able to learn to read or do long division because the trauma that they've endured is so eminent in their mind, and that's kind of taking up their brain space. And so that's very important to be aware of what the background is of your students. When I do consults with many of you out there, I like to know what you know of the family, because that's very, very important for me, whether the child was, switched to living with grandparents, or they've come from a country where they didn't have resources. All those kinds of things are so relevant as to how the child is functioning and how they perform in your class. Okay. All right. So looking at trauma, it really depends on how old the child is, the severity, the frequency, the duration, and the extent. Sometimes we think, well, maybe when they're younger, they can recover more easily. I've known a lot of traumatic situations. I worked with a student when I was in the psychiatric hospital. He was 14 years old, and he had been adopted by a fantastic set of parents. Parents were both educators. So the child was born to a prostitute. And in the 14 months that he lived with his biological mother, he was sexually abused by people that were his mother's customers. And so was taken from the home when the abuse was discovered and placed in the home of these educators who had older children and then ended up adopting this child. And so at the age of 14, when he came to the psychiatric hospital because he was suicidal, the trauma that he had endured at so young was still so horrific. He didn't even have words at that time. But because he was so young and because it was so severe, and who knows the frequency, we know the duration probably was 14 months, he was still traumatized and struggled to form an attachment with them. We're going to talk about attachment later. So despite being in a very, very good, solid, loving, emotionally supportive home, he still struggled because it came at such a young age and it was so extreme. So when we think about development, again, referencing our wonderful creator, he wanted us to just have these amazing brains, and children's brains, babies' brains are just bursting constantly. They actually, I think around 18 months, there's kind of culling of some of the brain's development or the cells, because there's almost so much and the brain is needing to specialize a little bit more. So when you think of all the things you do to help little ones develop, even for me, when I got a puppy, I had even read in the puppy books about all the things I need to do to introduce this puppy to all these experiences. Apparently I didn't do a good job with balloons because she's still terrified of balloons. But it was like different services, different people, stimulation. Well, if that's how much I did for her, you can only imagine how much more I did for my own two children. And even in the classroom, all the things that you do, whether it's field trips or sensory things, music, games at PE and out recess, all these things make such a difference. All these experiences help their brains to develop and explode. So genetics forms the basis, but the environment and experiences we have are going to drive that. So then when you have adverse things like abuse or prenatal exposure to drugs or malnutrition, that also has lasting effects, unfortunately, because it curbs what that child's potential could be. All right, so each age and stage carries its own critical developmental period. So when I think back to that 14-year-old boy that I was mentioning to you that I worked with in the psychiatric hospital, that very first stage, if we go back to Erickson and the intro to psych, that psychosocial stage he missed of trust versus mistrust. Every stage on top of that could not be well developed because that first stage was shattered. He was never able to develop that with somebody. But depending on the stage, sometimes you can try to go back and kind of solve that stage. And his parents had actually asked, they had brought up to me some kind of interesting counseling. And so where they would go back and try and build that stage again. And they asked me if I thought it was worth it. And I said, yes, because every stage since then, he's not been able to move past. So in that second point, one of the things I think I want to point out to you as a group is memory and verbal capacities. Because oftentimes with students who struggle in your classes who have had a history of trauma, you will see memory as an issue, that long-term retrieval, that ability, the filing of the brain to be able to pull back information that y'all are on break this week. If you taught something on Thursday, next Tuesday, will your student who's been traumatized be able to remember that? Their capacity to is going to be definitely restricted compared to the child who's had a really wonderful upbringing. Their verbal capacities, there be that functional communication to tell you what's going on, to be able to put into words what they're feeling, or even just when they need help in class on an assignment, versus just acting out because they don't have the words to tell you that this is really difficult and they feel that they're at risk. So those kinds of things are going to be impacted. And it can affect every part of their body. The biology, we definitely know the emotional, cognition, and their social development. All right. So we are meant to be built in a specific architecture from the bottom up. And then we have neural circuits, like I mentioned before, that are wired and looking for certain information, needing certain experiences to build upon. And so when kids are traumatized, all of that early wiring, again, those stages, it just sets a very bad foundation. And if you've ever talked to a friend who bought a nightmare of a house because there were problems in the house, whether it was wiring, whether it was roofing, whether it was a poor foundation that was shifting, it's architecture. Kids are the same. They need a certain kind of foundation. They need that stability to keep growing. And so when you have kids who are traumatized, how can they perform in class? Because they just don't have the foundation quite yet. All right. So what is the impact of trauma on developmental trends? It can override, as I mentioned before, healthy development. They don't have a chance to develop coping skills, a sense of self in relation to others. So important with how they interact with others. These kids may always be the perpetual victim, and you think, oh, they just can't take responsibility. They don't have a sense of self. Their self is so insecure that they don't recognize that they can take responsibility and that you'll still like them. You'll still want to have them in your classroom. So then they can't really interact with others properly. And of course, infants and toddlers, if it's severe trauma early on, there's a higher chance for long-term damage. But if it can be stopped, and then if they can be put in a place that is safe and the relationships and these things can be rebuilt, they can sometimes rebound. So I mentioned before attachment, how important attachment is. Attachment does so much for us. When you think about little ones, when they're learning to walk or crawl, they're always going to come back to mom or dad. They're going to watch to see what their parents are thinking of them. So we need attachment to survive. And we need it also, like I mentioned, for a sense of self, that regulation. Kids who are better attached are more likely to bounce back from terror and from trauma. So if you have a young lady who was sexually abused, definitely traumatic, but if she has a supportive home and she feels that she's put in counseling, she's given the opportunity to talk about it, to be able to still be stressed about it, a month later, a year later, when there's recognition that that trauma can still revisit her and still be triggered, she is going to be resilient versus a child who is in the same place with the people who are perpetrating and doesn't have that outlet. So this is probably what you guys really needed to hear, is what are the reactions to trauma? Well, every kid is different, but I just listed some things on this slide and the next slide of things you may see. Nightmares, you may not see that at school, but you might hear about it. They may journal about it, or they may just tell you in the morning that they didn't sleep well. And maybe they won't even tell you, they're just sleepy. They won't wake up that day. Their heads are on their desk. They might have had a really bad night. Physical symptoms are very common. We call it psychosomatization, where kids have tummy aches. Sometimes with sexual abuse, you're going to see the effects on their toileting, needing to use the restroom a lot more, UTIs, things like that. Hypervigilance, because they have such high cortisol levels, they are constantly physically aroused, so distracted. Everything kind of gets to them because they are so hypervigilant. They're on edge. So you want to think about those kinds of kids, the kids that are distractible. You need to put them in a preferred seating place, less distractions around them. And some parents may react to that. Some kids may react to that. They might consider it to be seclusion, but that child might just need a calming spot, maybe in a corner. And that sounds really harsh, but maybe they don't need to be visually distracted. Maybe having the classroom behind their back will be very helpful for them. So sometimes you have to just kind of play around and experiment to find the best seating arrangement for that child. Again, difficulty concentrating and disassociation. And hopefully you're not seeing a lot of that. There's a student at one of my schools right now who only speaks through a puppet at times, won't read. So we're trying to work with the puppet. It sounds crazy to say we're working with the puppet, but we're trying to meet the child where that child is at. And if right now they can only talk to us through a puppet, well, guess what? We're talking to the puppet, because that's when he'll communicate. And so we want to hear his voice. And if it's through the puppet, that's cool. We'll work with it. Other things are avoidance. Sometimes it could just be a smell, a sound, a look. Okay. Sometimes because of what's happened, they're very isolating. So maybe they had some friends and now they don't want to play with those friends anymore. So sometimes we need to encourage those children to maybe try some other friends or talk to the other children to try and include them in a different way. Okay. You're going to see lots of emotional ability with fear, worrying, anger, sadness. There's so much, and it's really hard to predict. One day that child could be very, very sad and then lash out at you in anger. So it just depends on what's going on inside of them. Flashbacks and remembering things. It's great when these kids can have ways to project in terms of writing it out, drawing it out, even just lots of sensory things to give them an outlet to kind of work out their frustrations. Okay. And some kids won't talk at all. Sometimes kids will shut down and you will not get to communicate with them. Maybe they'll find a puppet like my little friend I'm working with, or maybe it's just journaling, a little notebook you can journal back and forth. I think the most important thing in all of this is to recognize it may be frustrating on your part, but find whatever channel you can use to get that child communicating with you, interacting with you, as long as you can really show them that you are there and you're waiting and you're ready to hear from them and work with them. All right. All of these kinds of reactions, anger, sadness, these are normal things, right? We all get irritated if someone cuts us off when we're driving, or, You go somewhere and you can't get the one thing you went there to buy, but it becomes concerning when it impacts the daily functioning. So again, if you have a very outgoing child, and all of a sudden this child will not associate with anybody, is going to the bathroom during recess and in a stall crying, that's very atypical. Okay. A child who was doing very well academically and now just cannot remember how to, work through a math equation. What has happened for this child to be so different? Okay. So those are the things you want to look out for too. Even if trauma has not been identified to you, when a child takes a totally different path and it seems like a very different child, you need to have a conversation with the guardians and see what has happened in that child's life. All right, so it will affect most of the body system. Of course, the affect, that emotional component, the behavioral component, sometimes they are very inhibited and they will not interact, and sometimes they're not inhibited at all. And you'll see tons of impulsivity. You're definitely going to see an effect on their cognition and their self-concept. They may not ever tell you that they feel stupid or they feel badly, but you'll see it. You'll see it in the way that they interact or don't interact, that insecurity and the inability to take risks and the inability to just put themselves out there. And stress takes a toll on the body over time. And that last point, kids might be hyper or hypo. So kids who, of course, you all know what the kid who's hyperactive is like in the class, but then there's a hypo state, whereas the child who won't do anything, that's almost just as frustrating, the child who's acting out. The child who's hypo aroused is not doing anything for you, is not producing, doesn't seem to want to while you're at the board teaching. So those are things to look for too. So as I mentioned before, that the impact of trauma can be long-term because it disrupts the brain architecture and stresses the system. Going again back to Psych 101 and looking at fight or flight, when there's been trauma, kids are perpetually in fight or flight. They never quite come back to that homeostatic center. And they're always just reacting so quickly to things because the way they perceive things, it takes very little to trigger them. So then they might have more stress-related things as adults, okay, like ulcers and so forth. What can you do? Provide structure and consistency. They kind of want to know ahead of time. They don't want to be surprised, which kind of goes into easing transition. So if they're on a preferred activity and they're happy, you still need to switch. So you just want to count them down using a timer on the board, anything like that. Anything that's going to be very loud and jarring, like fire drills. It's pretty scary for kids, even your typical kids, but it's a good thing to let them know ahead of time. Providing lots of choices because they may not have had much choice in their life. So even if it's just like, do you want the red paper or the blue paper? That's still empowering for them. And then maybe they choose green. That's cool too, because it's just a piece of paper. Okay. So as much as possible, try not to make things a power struggle. If it's just a minor thing that you can give them control of because they need it, do that just to help them because it's just the small things that can make a difference. Develop their strengths and interests. They may not be interested in reading, but maybe they're interested in reading about a certain topic. Maybe trying to find books that will pique their interest. A lot of kids like series. That's fun to kind of have that expectation about what's going to happen next. Okay. Most importantly, just be there for them. Let them know that you are there, that you're willing to listen, and you may never talk about the trauma with them directly, but I think your presence, that attachment will make the difference. And then also give them a timeout spot. Sometimes kids need to leave the room. In one of my schools, we have a student who walks the halls when he's stressed out. And I think some teachers can flow at that, some teachers don't, because obviously he's missing instructional time. But if he's sitting there and he's distracting others or he's starting to become defiant, he's really missing instructional time anyways. So we just give him a time limit to go walk around because he needs it. And when he comes back, he can be more centered and perhaps focus better and will help his performance overall. All right, The one thing I want to say, and it sounds like I'm ending on a very somewhat negative note. I was in a professional development one time when we were talking about reactive attachment disorder, and that's disruptions in the caregiving cycle between the age of birth to 3 years and how traumatic that will be. And I remember the presenter said at least 3 times throughout the day, she said, love is not always enough. And I was so struck by that. I'm like, it's not. Sometimes it's not. It's a wonderful foundation and certainly the most necessary ingredient. But even with the support, kids need specific therapeutic interventions. And so if you know of a child in your class who is really struggling, and if you can talk with the guardians, you know, you can always reach out to me. I can try and find you some resources in the area, but loving kids is definitely the most important thing, but loving them in a specific therapeutic way is also very, very important for their healing. And last is take care of yourself, kind of like going on the coattails of my last professional development about self-care. You always have to take care of you. It is very hard to be a teacher in the age of this generation and the age of COVID. But when you have kids who are traumatized, you can then be have secondary trauma. So it's very important to take care of you, finding ways to connect with God, connect with good mentors and coworkers and so forth who will help fill up your system as well. All right. Hey, good timing.
Very good. Thank you. I'm sure we have
lots of questions. And I know if you've talked to Althea, you know what a resource she is. We really just have about 2 or 3 minutes to ask for some quick questions, or just remember that you've got her email in your chat and can email her maybe with specific questions about a student in your classroom. We know that it's amazing to hear that comment that love is not always enough. Love has to be specific.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that. I think Mrs. Patton's got her hand raised. Yes, someone said Love and Logic books are very helpful in parenting and teaching children with reactive attachment.
You know, I love asking questions. I wanted to know, Ms. Collins, could you, one strategy that I saw you mention was the calming spot in the classroom. I really like that idea.
Mm-hmm.
We have a student who's been through some trauma, and I would like to know, can you give us, you know, a few more strategies that we can use in the classroom? Because the classroom is the environment we can control. We can advise parents go get counseling for their kids,
Yes.
but, you know, they don't always follow through. So what are some things within our control, our 4 walls, that we can do in our classroom?
Well, something might be to even let them use headphones, listen to some music. That can also be helpful to help their focus. Sometimes kids like this, their sensory neural system is so overly alert. So sometimes things with compression, and you don't have to necessarily go out and buy it. You can just get, you know, a pillowcase, some fabric, you know, and staple it around, tape it around, duct tape it around, put some rice in it, something to lay on their lap, put across their shoulders. Those are very easy ways to kind of just help their system to calm down. Another thing to help that sensory overload is heavy work. If that child at lunchtime, recess, can help anybody carrying books, pushing, pulling, all of those are great ways to help calm down the system. Lots of sensory things, whether it's sand or Play-Doh, all those, you know, there's so many kind of squishy kind of things out there. And if a child can manage it and not let it be out of control, sometimes fidgets at the desk can be helpful. Velcro under the desk can help too. Velcro on the side, so they can rub their little fingers underneath just to give them something tactile when they're feeling stressed. Another is a pool noodle around the legs of the desks, so they can just run their feet on. So anything like that that's non-distracting, but gives that child some kind of tactile sensory input to help them feel calmer. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. And you know, that stuff works for teachers too. I have one of those sensory pillows with the mermaid sequence on it, and it's a great, I wish I'd brought it today. It's a great thing to do during Zoom meetings. So we're all, you know, swinging is another that helps regulate the body, or a rocking chair. So there's so many common things that we already have. So thank you for sharing with us on that, Althea. I'm looking for comments. I'm not really seeing any. Melanie Finelli mentioned that you had resources for recent grief counseling in the Marietta area. Do you have those, or did you share those? I'm not sure from the comments. Oh, asking for them. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm asking for them. We've had at Carmen, we've had a couple of students who have lost their parents due to COVID. And it's been a really, you know, tough first quarter. And, you know, anything that we can do to help them out would be awesome.
Okay, sorry, I just realized I was muted that whole time. Yes, definitely send me an email so I can look things up in your area, because I know we're covering such a broad base of area at this time. But yeah, I welcome any emails. I think Kim put it in the chat. So yes, please feel free to email me and I can definitely reach out to you.
Thank you, Althea.
Welcome.
So I think at this point, we're gonna make a transition. I would.
I just turned on my microphone. I would love to have just a prayer for Althea and her mission, but also how she's reached out to us and how thankful we are for that. So if we could just bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for Althea and the many passions and expertise that she brings to our teachers. We thank you for this fall break that we all can renew. And we just ask for us to remember that we have resources in our own backyard, that we are not alone in those battles in the trenches with those children. We just thank you for her willingness to continue to share her expertise with us, continue to work in her mission field, Lord. And I just ask for you to bless all of our teachers in the mission field where they find themselves. We just thank you for giving us your love and your forgiveness. And we look forward to that day that we'll always be together. But until then, give us a holy boldness to serve you better in each and every day. In Jesus' holy name, amen. Thanks, Althea. We appreciate you much. Transition, and I'm going to do my best to show you the afternoon schedule. Let's see if I can share something. And it is a little confusing because we're going to be doing some breakout sessions. And the breakout sessions are going to be by grade level. We'll be starting with Dr. Sandy Doran and Yvette Cooper for 15 minutes about the Three Angels philosophy. And then we're going to break out into 2 rooms by grade level. Now, I know that some of you are going to have to choose because you teach them all, but I'll let you choose that accordingly. And we're not going to be assigning you to those rooms. So you can go in and out. And hopefully Jonathan is going to be in the main session so he can help you get back in if you lose your place or feel like you've been kicked out or put in timeout. We'll do 2 main breakout rooms for 15 minutes. And then those 2 main breakout rooms are going to break down even further, the K2 and then the 3-4. And then we'll have the 5, 6, and 7, 8. I have put this in your chat and I'm going to try to put it in there again. That's a little easier to see and to read so that you'll have an idea of where to go. Jana and I and Yvette and Dr. Doran will try to help you know where to go. And I don't think you can go wrong in any room that you are, because you're going to be learning not only great things about the Three Angels Message curriculum, but you're also going to be learning some great things about reading and writing strategies that help us get those 2-for-1 grades. At this point, stand up and wiggle just a minute. And I'm going to push the chat so that you'll have that. It was a little difficult to read in the last one that I sent, so we'll try this again. And then you'll just have to trust us to get you where you need to be. And we look forward to our time with Dr. Doran and Yvette. I'm going to go ahead and send that out now. Maybe a little bit of the separation will help. And I'm going to leave this up on the screen if I can for just a few minutes while we get settled. And if you'll take just a minute or 2 to figure out what break you're going to go out. Are you going to be in the K-4, the 5 to 8? You'll get to choose that breakout room. And then as from 2:15 till 2:45, you have other choices to make. So if you could take just a minute and look at the schedule on the screen and write where you're going to be going, we will hopefully get you there. The other thing is, because we're going into breakout rooms after the first short presentation, those will not be recorded. So if you're watching this recording in the future, I feel like I'm on, what is the show with Sheldon? Big Bang Theory, talking about the future. But if you're watching this in the future, that's going to be a period that we just were not able to record. So take about another minute. I'm going to leave this up on the screen, and then we'll ask Dr. Doran to get ready. And a Padlet is this place that I uploaded some resources. It's a web address that you can go to, and then I'll just put that in a minute, just the actual web address for you to pull up that tiny URL. So thank you so much. I'm glad you folks are letting me know what room you're going to. As long as you know where you're going to, once we get started, that's going to be the most important. Is this program supplement to the encounter? I'll let Dr. Doran answer that one. That's a very good question. It is it's a 2-week supplemental program, but it is filled for your language arts programs. Just a great program. So as long as you know where we're going, I'm going to stop screen sharing and invite Dr. Doran to come in and start sharing with us.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for sticking with it. You guys have been in your seats all this time. And I said to my husband, I should have done the morning one. I'm going to lose them all. And you're all still here. Go Georgia-Cumberland. And thank you for those of you who are keeping your camera on. It's very energizing to those of us who are presenting to actually see real people there, so we're not just staring at our screen. So I really appreciate that a lot. And I know this sounds a little crazy the way this schedule is, but we really want to give you some time to do some hands-on stuff so you don't get too terribly bored. But you guys are hanging in there. I want to also, before Yvette and I'll introduce ourselves a little bit, but before Yvette and I plunge into this 3 Angels curriculum, which you guys are going to love because it is very easy to pick up and do. It's like our gift to you. It's very low cost, and it's just something you're going to love. But before I get into that, I wanted to tell you something else. So you got great leaders there in Georgia-Cumberland, and they asked me if I would help you, if I would put together a training on balanced literacy and what balanced literacy is and how do you do it. You know, when you do pathways, that's a balanced literacy program. There are some pieces that you have to do yourself, right? The guided reading part is not part of pathways. In the manual, there's a few paragraphs that tell you what guided reading is and that you need to do guided reading, but you have to put it together yourself. So in our training, we have exactly how to do that, how to make an assessment kit, how to make flexible groups, how to look at pathways in light of what's a balanced literacy program and how am I sure that I'm doing this appropriately. So we just put that together for you. You're the first ones that'll get to use this and see it since your leaders wanted it. We put it together. So Kim, did you want to put up on the screen the letter that you're going to be sending out to them so we could tell them a little bit about this? This is another way you can get CEUs as well. And you should be getting something in your email that will tell you about this. But if you go through this class, we have the introductory part is free. So you can see what it's all about. You can see everything that you'll learn in there. And then you have a part A and a part B. And if you complete all of that, part A, you get 1 full CEU, and part B, you get 1 full CEU. Because when you go through this course, there are tasks and things you have to do. And by the time you're done, you will really raise the bar in literacy. So you will be getting that in your email. And I think the conference does have some monies for you to do that. So I think maybe when Kim comes back, she's going to tell you a little bit about that. But I want to make sure that you know how to get there and that we have those courses for you and that you have some funding for these courses. Okay, and I see Yvette has come on now. So Yvette and I are very excited. We worked together years ago and now we're back working together again. So I will come over to the three angels side now and tell you about that. Unless Kim, did you want to show them that other paper or wait till later?
I can show it to them right quick. As I told them earlier, it's kind of a, let's see, I don't think it's letting me share. Okay, here we go. I think it's a teaser. I want them to get into it and read it because I think, number one, that the category and the work that they'll be able to do here will be so beneficial to their reading and writing program. But if they read the whole document, it really might be worth their time. And I just have to use the word prizes, and they know what that means. So this gives you some information about this. You know, if you have any question, Dr. Doran's email is there. If you have specific questions about it, I registered for the first one last night. It was a very easy process, and look forward to actually having the time this week during fall break to go in and to do that. And it says it has 30 downloadable resources that come with the course. So that's very exciting. It was an easy thing to do. They'll get a copy of this with the secret part down at the bottom on the second page. So that's all I'm going to say.
Okay, all right. Well, look for the secret part. I'm finding out that Georgia-Cumberland likes prizes. So you know what? I'm going to up the ante and we're going to do a prize at the end of our presentation. We're going to do a $50 Amazon gift card. We don't want you guys to beat us out with your prizes.
Well, thank you for trying to one-up us.
It's not possible, but we'll do our best. A $50 gift card at the end. Okay, so we're going to just tell you a little bit about the philosophy and how we got into all this. We're going to skip any big intros because we want to be sure we have time. So you may wonder, how did we get involved doing something on the Three Angels messages? Well, it was quite a while ago that a couple of years ago, I was approached by some Adventist lay people who just had this passion for this and wanted to know if this was something that I would do. So I really prayed about it. And I thought, how am I going to teach the Three Angels messages to little children? At first, I thought maybe it's not quite developmentally appropriate. How do you teach a little first grader? You know, Babylon has fallen. How do you talk about all of this? Anyway, so when I went to bed that night, God put this little poem in my head to let me know, yes, indeed, this is what I should be doing. And that became our first little booklet for children. So I'm going to show you that so you can kind of all just get the idea of how God blessed. But it later became this beautiful book. But this was the little poem that God put in my head that night. And I just grabbed a pencil and wrote it down. Yvette, you want to read the book for them real quickly?
Right. Okay. Three angels in the sky. Oh my, oh my, oh my. Ready? Let's begin the story. First angel, give God the glory. He's always fair and good and true. He'll do what's right for me and you. He made the earth and outer space. Now go and tell in every place. Second angel, the city's going down. Watch out, be safe, get out of town. Third angel, be patient, trust Jesus in light and in dark. He'll always protect you like Noah in the ark. Three angels in the sky to show the love of God on high. And when the story's said and done, we'll all look up and see God's Son.
So that was the little poem in my head when I wasn't sure if I should do this or not. And I said, Lord, if you're going to give me that, I'm on. So that's kind of how I got involved in this. And then the project has gotten so big. We were on 3ABN last Sabbath. Maybe some of you saw us. It was aired at 9 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon, 9 in the evening, and at midnight. So if you saw us, you'll know that it's just really been going crazy. People are very excited about it. But you may be wondering, look, you just sat through this whole Pathways presentation. Your head is probably throbbing. I know that when I was a superintendent, I was like, we can't keep putting more and more on these teachers. It is too much. Their heads are going to explode, you know? So you've been through a lot. Well, when I was asked to do it, I said to the sponsors, there's so much they have to do. So what we decided to do was to make this a real gift for teachers. So what this is, it's a 2-week unit and everything comes with it. So you never have to worry like, oh, I'm just too busy, I can't fit another thing. It's NAD approved. So take a breath. And if you want some time, maybe right before Christmas break, right after Christmas break, when you don't have to be going around finding all kinds of materials, finding Q-tips for your encounter program, finding cotton balls, everything's there, spelled out, and it's integrated. So you don't have to say, I don't have time, because you can do your Bible and your reading at the same time. It's multi-grade friendly. It's just a little gift to you. And it is not expensive at all. Yvette and I don't get any extra money for doing this. We are on salary, so we're not vendors, and our donors have made this very accessible. You're basically paying for paper and ink. So this is not a sell for a vendor. This is an Adventist talking to other Adventists from the heart that we wanted to give you something special for you and your children. So what is it? Why do we need it? Where does it fit? Yvette, you want to do, what is this?
All right, this is a 2-week supplemental unit. As Sandy said, it doesn't take the place of Encounter, but this is a program that will actually ground our students in our Seventh-day Adventist beliefs. It helps them, and I think I'm going right into the next one.
That's okay.
But this is a 2-week unit. And of course, it takes away that fear. When we, so many people, when they think of the judgment and the 3 angels message, they think of fear. So it's created in a grace-filled understanding of the 3 angels message. That's why we need this.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's right. That's right. And where does it fit? When you need a little break, you just literacy block, you put this together for a couple of weeks, boom, you have it. So I'm going to go really quickly through this, but Yvette has piloted every single one of these grades and loved the user-friendly. And we've got your methods right in here. So if someone says, oh, you're not doing PBL yet? Well, if you're doing our 7th and 8th grade unit, you're going to be doing a PBL. It's right in there. And Yvette, you want to take this one?
Yes, it addresses some of the social issues. It's amazing because Sandy wrote this a few years back, but it addresses social issues that we face today. All different, whether it's dealing with our relationships as far as our cultures and races, or religion, different religion, those social issues are there, and it helps our students learn how to make wise decisions.
All right, and that positive perspective, when we work with kids, we did a week of prayer, we had 200 kids from around the world. And if you want to quickly type into the chat, at the beginning, before we started, and we said to these kids, which emoji do you pick? How do you feel when you think of the judgment? Quickly type into the chat now, participate with us. Which emoji do you think they picked? And Yvette, if you can let me know what they're typing in, if you can see it.
Yeah. Sad, sad, sad.
Exactly.
Crying.
Yes. That's what they picked. And, we don't want that. Or why are we teaching this if we're giving kids nightmares or something, or making them cry themselves to sleep? So at the end, once they have worked with us, which one do you think they picked? And you can go ahead and type it in.
Joy, thumbs up, heart, happy.
Exactly.
Yes,
exactly.
Heart, happy, excited, love.
So we're very excited about that. And if we had more time, we sometimes ask teachers, which do they think is the most compelling reason to do this curriculum? And teachers generally pick grounding students in Adventist distinctives and introducing a positive perspective. And I always think that's interesting because teachers, you guys have a beautiful heart. You're thinking of the students, but we're going to move on quickly here. It's very multi-grade friendly. I've never understood why we make materials and then afterwards try to adapt them to multi-grade as a system, because most of you are teaching multi-grade. So you're going to find that our grades 3, 4, and 5, 6 materials are all written on 3 different reading levels. So if you have a 1-room classroom and you have our 3, 4, and 5, 6 materials, you're good to go. Very multi-friendly, very minimal cost, which you'll see. And we also even have grant money if you can't afford the minimal cost. So anyway, I am here to help students be ready for Jesus to come and to understand last day events in the context of love, not fear. All right. So that's the first part of our quick overview. And oh, thank you. Look at all these. Oh, they're just putting heart because they think the kids picked it. I came off of the screen share and I thought everybody loved me. I was all excited. Okay, well, I'll take it for what it's worth anyway. All right, so we wanted to make this quick and active. Oh, look at that. Thank you.
Oh, we do love you.
Very sweet. So that you guys are doing something, moving all over the place, and that's okay. So we're going to go to 2 breakout rooms now. I'm going to take everybody that wants to hear. No, Yvette's going to take everybody that wants to hear about K4. I'm going to take everybody that wants to hear about 5-8. You're going to hear a little bit all together about that. Then you're going to go and do some activities with it. Okay. All right. Thank you. You guys are so validating. I think Georgia-Cumberland is like my new best friend. I'm liking you guys over here. All right. So let's go to our breakout room. So I'm going to be breakout room 2. Yvette's going to be breakout room 1. Right. So where are the 2 rooms? How can I get into one?
I don't see
how to do it.
I haven't been invited yet.
Oh, here it is. Breakout room 5 through 8. So I want to join it.
Right, one would be for you, Yvette, and then breakout room 2 would be for the others.
Okay.
Activity room is for later on, so everybody should be in 1 or 2.
Join breakout room 2, yeah.
If you're not seeing the breakout rooms, scroll down lower and you'll see them. If you're just seeing a list of names.
Escape.
So Kim, do they find their name and then hit assign themselves to the room they want to go to?
Okay, so far we have 20 people.
No, scroll down lower and you'll see the 2 rooms.
Already?
You'll
What are you
see
gonna-
breakout
what are you
room
gonna
1 to
You're
4.
finished with
Yeah,
this.
breakout 1, you
Go
put
take a
join.
break, take a walk, eat some food.
Yeah, just the participants that haven't been assigned yet are at the top, so you'll need to scroll down, Jana. Thank you.
Huh.
Painting,
mine just
like
had
the
a thing that
walls,
just
where
said
you
join.
hardest
I
thing-
got to the other room.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
No, I get it. Oh, yes, thank you.
Some of you haven't decided where to join because maybe you have multiple grades or you're an administrator.
Also, if you don't see any breakout rooms, go down to the bottom, across the bar at the bottom, you'll see a button that says breakout rooms. And if you click on that, it will bring them up.
Yes, click on where it says more, and that'll give you the option of the breakout room.
Yes, if you scroll all the way down, you should see at the very bottom where you could join.
I'm trying to put some people in groups as I know where they are.
Sandy, which group would you like to be in?
I just assigned her. If she hits it, she should be able to go.
Okay.
Tiffany, don't know where you are. I'll try to help assign you.
Alyssa, do you want to go to K4?
Yes. Dawn, where would you like to go? 5 to 8?
Yolanda, I just assigned you to K4. Hit it, please. Okay.
I think we're the only ones left, guys. Leanne, I'll put you in the upper grades.
5 to 8.
Yep.
Can you please assign me to K4, please?
Let me see where you are, Barbara.
I tried, but I ended up in a room by myself.
Okay, I'm trying to find you on here.
She's probably
Yep.
in that.
I'm
She's
at
down at the bottom. She's at the bottom, activity room A.
Oh, I'm gonna move you to, you said K4?
Yep.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay, hit join now. You should be able to move.
Thanks,
you.
guys. Good teamwork.
I need to be moved still.
Who is it?
Alyssa. Huh.
Okay. Alyssa, where did you want to go?
K4.
Okay, it's showing that you're in K4.
Yeah, she just has to accept it, I guess.
Okay. Because there's no options for her to go other than to 5-8.
Do you see
I didn't see anything to join.
Do you see a button? Let's see.
I didn't see it or I missed it. Maybe, I don't know.
It's if you go up, in fact, I can see your name under Breakout Room 1, K-4, join. It's a blue.
Are you on a phone? Sometimes you have to swipe left to the right.
No, I'm on an iPad. It like briefly showed something and I couldn't even get my thumb to the screen fast enough to push join.
Let me ask you this. Would you want me to try to move you to 5 to 8 to see if it will let you go there? At least you would be in a room.
Yeah, I substitute all grades. That's fine.
Okay, let's try that. I think she got moved. Let's see, I'm going to go down and look at the next one. No, it's still saying she's not joined. No matter where I put her. Well, no, it looks like now she's joined.
Good.
Okay, I see Leanne and are they in rooms?
Yeah, Leanne, Jody, and Don.
Group that is open. All right. So now when you look at that program, the materials, you might ask, and I was asked to go over those during this first part of the session, you might say, do I have to order every year? Once you've ordered this program, the only thing you will need to order are the, I didn't hear what she said.
Computers, and they're out doing something else, and they didn't hit the join button.
Right.
Okay.
So they've tuned in, but they're not tuned in. You know how we do.
No.
Great job, team.
All right, I'm gonna go join K-4 because then we've got a smaller breakout. So
You're still recording though. Do you want to record?
is it recorded? Should we stop right there?
I not recommend that because for $29.95, you're getting the full teacher kit. You're getting the poster. You know, you don't want to have to print out your entire teacher's guide. You know, for $30, you'd rather just get everything. You get the slides, you get everything. But anyway, that's the curriculum. If you were grades 3, 4, you would just go here. Under curriculum, you pick for classroom. And then you'll notice that we have it on 3 reading levels. So if you're teaching grades 3 and 4, for your students who are reading at grade level, you would get the blue kit. For students that are reading above grade level, or if you're a multi-grade, you have some higher level students, you can get the green kit. They're doing the same lessons and everything, but they have a book on their reading level. And then for the low readers, we have the yellow level of the book. And then you can replace these things. But you notice with grades 3 and 4, once you buy your materials, except for the journal, and in grades 3, 4, you could use any journal. So you wouldn't have to worry. Once you buy your materials, you really don't have to replenish. So anyway, this is the website. We also have our grant section here on the website so that if you need help, You can fill out this form. You do have, it's a matching grant, so you do have to find a way to get your first half, but you can submit your request and it will go right to Yvette and she will make a decision on that. So anyway, this is the website. You'll see everything you need there. And that's that. I think, let's see, we're getting most people back. Okay. How'd your group go, Kim? You have a good time over there?
I think we did, but we realized how quickly 15 minutes goes. We could have spent all day on that. It's such a wonderful curriculum. We do have a question here. Are the trainings pre-recorded? That's a question that's in the chat.
Yes. Yes, I have recordings of whatever you want. On Adventist Learning Community, we have courses that walk you through the basics of this program, how to order the materials and all of that. So you'll find Adventist Learning Community. Also, Kim, I think I sent you a link to a folder that has narrated PowerPoints and everything else. You know, you can share that. If you need it again, I can give that to
Yeah,
you.
why don't you do that? Because I'm getting together. I probably will have to send it with a different email. Don't want to send too much there. There was a question in the chat about let's see, what was it? Karen, it was from you about Beth. Is it appropriate to read to multiple grade levels or?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yvette piloted that with grades 3 through 8. So,
okay.
Yeah, that works very well for that.
Okay.
My question was, if you read it to the younger children and then they get it later several times, is that still appropriate, would you say?
Yeah, so what I am trying to do is write a sequel to it right now. I have the sequel like maybe 1/4 of the way done, but then I have to do a teacher guide to go with it. So yeah, that's the hope. That's the hope. But so now if you would start it with grades 3, 4, really. I wouldn't do it with pre-K 2. I'd do the pre-K 2 materials with them. Okay, so Yvette, did you show them anybody the website or anything?
She did.
Yeah, good. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do now is ask you to do 3 things, and then we're going to give out a $50 gift card. Okay, so let me show you this. So just so you know, you can get CEUs at the Adventist Learning Community. Then we want you to subscribe to our website. We want you to like our Facebook page and join our Facebook group. So the difference between the page and the group is that the group is where you put all your, where you upload the pictures and the things that you do. You know, one of your teachers just mentioned that her little girl was the one in a little video we have that we just showed on 3ABN. We get so excited when we see your artwork and you posting your work so that we know that our work is making a difference. So right now we're going to give you a few minutes to do this. And when you go and do these things, just take a look, because we're going to ask you some questions about the website. We might say, what is the name of the tab where you order or something? So go ahead right now and subscribe to the website, which is 3angelsforkids.com. Go over to the Facebook page and like it, or subscribe to it, or whatever you do with the Facebook page, and the Facebook groups. Go ahead and join it. We're going to give you a few minutes to do that. And then we're going to ask some questions, 5 questions, and have you type the answers into the chat. So look very closely when you do
We've
that.
already had someone that says done, even though she's got one hand with stitches in it. She said the typing was hard. So she's done, and so she's going to be ready.
Okay. All
For
right.
those answers. Thanks, Daphne, and hope those stitches in that hand get better.
Okay.
I only have 19 of them. So.
Oh, well,
Can
no
you-
problem.
Can you put those lights back up again? Because I'm not as fast as the other one.
Oh, sure. Let me see. Where was I? Sorry. The
last slide.
Yeah, I will. Sorry. I was going to the website to get the questions. So now I gotta get back here. Where is that slide? Where did it go? Okay, let me go back over to here and see if it's here.
Sandra, where do we subscribe for the email on there?
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay, so go to the bottom of the page and you're gonna see the email on the website. Scroll to the bottom of the home page.
Sandy, I hate to interrupt you, but the room that we're in, we're going to be kicked out at 3:15.
Oh, boy. All right.
Not
Well,
to
3
rush
minutes.
anyone, not to rush anybody.
Okay, well, then I'm just gonna give one question and the one that gets it is gonna be getting this gift card. All right, $50 Amazon gift card for only answering one question. Okay, here we go. The question is, name 2 tabs on the website. Type it into the chat. Name 2 tabs on the website. Got to name 2 tabs. All right, home and about us was the first one. Home and about us. All right, so who put that?
That was Tim.
That was an easy one. Oh,
Tim
come on
Knowlton.
now. All right, well, Tim Knowlton's the winner then. Tim Knowlton, I know some Knowltons from New England, so if you're related to them, no wonder you got it right. That's a good thing. Okay, well, Tim Knowlton, put your email address in the chat and you just got yourself an easy gift card.
And his name is Be Sweet and Stay Calm.
Type it in, Tim, before we get kicked out if you want the gift card. I don't see his.
Oh, he still hasn't.
His email. He's not as quick with his email as he is with his.
Oh, Tim still hasn't typed it in.
He's gonna get kicked out. Well, if I don't get it, you better send it to me.
Yes, Sandra, we'll get it to you.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, T.I. Knowlton.
Yes. Anything else, Sandy, that you want to share with us before we close out? And Elder Rustad is going to have closing prayer for us.
Oh.
Be sure and look for an email with attachments, and then future
I would park and go in.
emails will say road trip to professional development as we send out information for you. I don't know if you can hear that or not.
It's massive.
Oh, okay.
Barbara's open.
Okay. So what will be good is that you can always email me, and then you've got Sandy and you've got Yvette's number, and then we actually email, and you also have Lynn Maloney's. So we're here to help you, but we just hope most importantly that your fall break is going to be refreshing, and that your professional development goes well. And that means taking care of yourself first before you can take care of others. So Kevin, I'm going to turn that back over to you. I don't know if
Gary's here. Gary's here, so.
I'm here.
So Gary, go ahead and wrap us in a word if you want to give a final comment to the folks. I'm sure they'd appreciate hearing from you.
Yeah, no, you know what, teachers, I just want to thank you for everything you do. And I really hope that over these next few days, you get some much needed rest. I know that you need it. I got 3 kiddos in our school here at Coble, and I know they need it, and I know you need it even more. So thanks so much for what you're doing. Have a great break. Why don't we close with a word of prayer? Father, I want to thank you so much for each one of these teachers, the energy, the time that they put into our kiddos, teaching not only the math, the science, those things, but most importantly, teaching our kiddos about Jesus, who he is, leading them to the throne. And so, Father, I just ask that you be with our teachers. Father, may these next few days be days filled with a lot of refreshing for them. Thank you so much for your love. Thank you so much for even Zoom today. Be with us now in Jesus' name. Amen.